I'm just I've just started the YouTube recording. Just 1 second.
Okay.
Yeah, we are live now. Yeah.
பேராசிரியர் ஜார்ஜ் ஹாட் அவர்களே, தமிழ்ச் சங்கத்தின் தலைவர் செந்தில்குமார் அவர்களே, செயற்குழு உறுப்பினர்களே மற்றும் உள்ள நண்பர்களே, உங்கள் அனைவருக்கும் முதற்கண் என் அன்பு வணக்கம். பேராசிரியர் ஜார்ஜ் ஹாட் அவர்களுக்கு அறிமுகம் தேவையில்லை. நம்மில் பலருக்கும் அவரை நன்கு தெரியும். இருந்தாலும் இந்த கூட்டத்தில் அவரை முறையாக வரவேற்று அறிமுகப்படுத்துவதை என் கடமையாக கருதி அவரை பற்றி ஒரு சில செய்திகளை உங்களோடு பகிர்ந்து கொள்வதில் நான் பெருமகிழ்ச்சி அடைகிறேன். பேராசிரியர் ஜார்ஜ் ஹாட் ஹார்வர்ட் பல்கலைக்கழகத்தில் சமஸ்கிருதத்தில் முனைவர் பட்டம் பெற்றார். அதற்கு பிறகு சில ஆண்டுகள் விஸ்கான்சன் பல்கலைக்கழகத்தில் பேராசிரியராக பணியாற்றினார். பின்னர் கலிபோர்னியாவில் பெர்க்லி பல்கலைக்கழகத்தில் தமிழ் துறையை நிறுவி தமிழ் பேராசிரியராகவும் தமிழ்துறை தலைவராகவும் தமிழ் இருக்கை பேராசிரியராகவும் பணிபுரிந்தார். இவரிடம் பயிற்சி பெற்று தமிழில் முனைவர் பட்டம் பெற்றவர் பலர். இவர் சமஸ்கிருதம் மட்டுமல்லாமல் பல இந்திய மொழிகளிலும் ஐரோப்பிய மொழிகளிலும் மிகுந்த புலமை உடையவர். தமிழ் மொழிக்கும் சமஸ்கிருதம் பிராகிருத் ஆகிய மொழிகளுக்கும் உள்ள தொடர்பை பற்றி பல ஆராய்ச்சி கட்டுரைகளும் நூல்களும் எழுதியுள்ளார். புறநானூறு மற்றும் அகநானூறு ஆகிய சங்க இலக்கிய நூல்களை மிகச் சிறப்பாக ஆங்கிலத்தில் மொழிபெயர்த்து நூல்களாக வெளியிட்டிருக்கிறார். தமிழ் மொழி செம்மொழியாவதற்கு அனைத்து தகுதிகளும் உடைய மொழி என்று இவர் பரிந்துரை செய்தார். இந்திய அரசு தமிழ் மொழியை செம்மொழி என்று அறிவிப்பதற்கு இவருடைய பரிந்துரை ஒரு முக்கிய காரணமாக இருந்தது. தமிழ் மற்றும் பல இந்திய மொழிகளில் இவருடைய புலமையையும் ஆராய்ச்சிகளையும் பாராட்டி இந்திய அரசு இவருக்கு 2015ஆம் ஆண்டு பத்மஸ்ரீ பட்டம் அளித்து இவரை சிறப்பித்தது. உங்கள் அனைவரையும் போல் பேராசிரியர் ஜார்ஜ் ஹாட் அவர்களின் அகநானூறு பற்றிய கருத்துக்களை கேட்க நானும் மிகுந்த ஆவலுடன் இருக்கிறேன். ஆகவே பேராசிரியர் ஜார்ஜ் ஹாட் அவர்களை வருக வருக என்று வரவேற்று அவர் உரையை தொடங்குமாறு அன்புடன் வேண்டுகிறேன். நன்றி.
Give me a second here. I need to get this up. Let me see if I can do this. It's, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you see me?
Yeah, I see you.
Okay. Vanakkam. Let me just see what in the world that this is trying to do. All right, well, that's not working. Let me see. Let me go to, just 1 second.
You can see your screen as well.
All right, let's see. I don't know, I'm trying to get it. It says stop share. Maybe I need to sign in again. I'm not sure. But you can hear me, that's what matters, and you can see me, right?
Yes.
We can see you because your screen is also active. You're in a corner. Whenever you speak, your photo will come. When somebody else speaks, their photo will come.
Oh, okay. So, well, let me just do this. I should be able to see. Wait, it says sign in. Wait, let me do sign in. No, that's not working. Let me do something. Look, I'm going to log off and try to get on again because something not working right.
Okay.
Let me just log in again. Leave.
He wants to go back and forth. ஷேர் பண்ணுறதும் படம் காமிக்கிறதும் பார்க்குறாரு. அது எப்படி செய்யறதுன்னு சொல்லுங்க அவருக்கு.
தம்பி அவங்க என்ன ட்ரை
சொல்லுங்க.
பண்றாங்கன்னு உங்களுக்கு புரிஞ்சுதா? இப்ப யாரோ சொன்னாங்களே,
இல்ல
யாருன்னு
ஐயா
தெரியல, நான் கவனிக்க.
இல்ல ஐயா வந்து வெளியில போயிட்டாரு. அவர் திரும்பி வந்ததுக்கு அப்புறம் நம்ம சொல்லலாம். அவர் வந்து ஒரு பிரசன்டேஷன் ஷேர் பண்றாரு. அவரே வந்து பேசுறாரு. ஸோ அது 2 அவர் பேசுறது நமக்கு தெரியுது. அவர் பிரசன்ட் பண்றது நமக்கு ஷேர்
ஆமா,
ஆகுது.
he was
ஆனால்
good only. ஆமா,
ஆமா. அது 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 அத தவிர்த்து அவர் வேற என்ன செய்றாரு?
அது தெரியல.
ஏதாவது
நம்ம ஒண்ணு பண்ணலாமா?
ஆமா.
ரெக்கார்டிங்க ஸ்டாப் பண்ணிடுங்க. நம்ம
ஓகே.
வந்து திரும்ப வந்து அவர் வந்து இது எல்லாம் சார்ட் அவுட் பண்ணிட்டு
இல்ல
ரெக்கார்டிங்ல
வந்துட்டாரு.
பேசலாம்.
வந்துட்டாரு. ஓகே.
Yeah. Okay, sorry about that, but I think we're here.
ஷூர்,
No,
ஷூர்.
don't be sorry, sir. It's totally fine. And Nambi, you removed the waiting mode, right?
Yeah.
That is true. Yeah, he's in. Yeah, he's in. We can see you, Mr. George.
All right. So let me just start. You know, one of the questions people always ask, and I'm sorry, I'm going to just speak in English. I'm 80, I'm getting too old, so தமிழை பேசினா கொஞ்சம் கஷ்டமாக இருக்கும். ஆனால் இங்கிலீஷில் தான் பேச போகிறேன். கொஞ்சம் மெதுவாக பேசினா நல்லா இருக்கும்னு நினைக்கிறேன். So I'll try to speak a bit slowly. When we talk about Tamil and what makes Tamil Tamil, people have all sorts of things that they say. And what I'd like to talk about today is what, in my opinion, makes Tamil what it is. When people talk about Tamil, they very often talk about its age. In fact, the same thing happens when they talk about Sanskrit. Everybody says Sanskrit is one of the oldest languages in the world. Tamil is one of the oldest languages in the world. And up to a point, those things are correct, but only to a point. Neither Tamil nor Sanskrit is among the oldest languages that we know of. Sumerian, ancient Egyptian, Chinese, all those languages go back quite a bit further than either Sanskrit or Tamil. But it always worries me because people somehow think that age is more important than content. If a language is very old, that's good. If it's not old, that's not good. But what really sets a language apart and makes a language what it is its history and what is in it. And that, in that way, Tamil is among the Indian languages, including Sanskrit. It has its own special and, in my mind, extraordinary history and heritage. Now, when we talk about languages, generally, if it's a classical language, and Tamil is a classical language, we talk about the literature in that language. What did people write, and what is the quality of that writing, and in what ways does that writing shape the language and make it what it is? Think about it. If we just talk about Tamil as it's used today, it's a very expressive language. It's a rich language. You can say things in it. But there's something that's only a small part of what Tamil is. And the reasons for that go way back about 2,000 years. About 2,000 years ago, Sanskrit was in the process of becoming a lingua franca of South Asia and also even much of Southeast Asia. But that process had only barely begun. Tamil probably, and I don't want to get into, I'm not talking in any political terms or anything like that. But when we look, at least in my opinion, Tamil was probably written down around the 3rd, 2nd century BC. There's a lot of controversy about how it got written down. Did the writing system come from North India or South India, and so on? But the evidence is pretty clear it came from the north, and it was adapted for Tamil. Now, one thing that's very, very important is that this process happened before Sanskrit became the kind of measure that every language felt it had to measure itself against. And for that reason, Tamil did not borrow all of the sounds that are in Sanskrit, as we know. In fact, some people criticize Tamil for that. But in my opinion, it simply shows that when the writing system was adapted for Tamil, people did it in a very rational and excellent way. And that is the writing system that we still use today. Of course, it's changed a lot and gone through a lot of different permutations, but the basic fact is in Tamil, you don't write all of the Sanskrit letters. And in addition, you also write letters which are not in Sanskrit, or sounds, phonemes which are not in Sanskrit. So this is something which is very important, that Tamil began before Sanskrit became so important, and that because of this, Tamil, well, because of this, we have things that were written in Tamil before Sanskrit became the model everybody felt they should follow. Now, of course, where I'm going is the earliest literature that we have in Tamil, which we call Sangam literature, something of a misnomer, but we'll call it Sangam literature in any case because of the legends associated with it. When we talk, when we talk about Sangam literature, we're talking about a literature that was written down or written probably in the first 2 centuries of the Common Era. Some people think some things in it may even be earlier than that. It really doesn't matter terribly much when it was written down, except for the fact that it does not use Sanskrit as a model. And we can't emphasize that too much, because that is what they call Tani Chirapu of Tamil, that it has its own classical literature which follows its own conventions and its own notions of what literature should be. Now, we don't have time to go through all of the great works that were written in this period and which have fortunately come down to us, although some of them have been lost. Everybody knows, of course, the Tirukkural, and that's one of the treasures from that time. But it's only one. And when we look at all of Sangam literature, we see something which is amazingly inclusive of all human experience. Now, what I want to do now is to contrast what we have in Tamil with what is in Sanskrit. Now, there's no reason to make value comparisons. Sanskrit is better than Tamil, Tamil is better than Sanskrit. That's foolish. Both are very rich traditions, but they're different. And that's what I like to bring out now. And how are they different? When we look at Sanskrit, we have very rich literature. We have, starting with the Vedas, and everybody knows most of the things that one encounters in Sanskrit. When we get to ordinary literature, we come to writers like Kalidasa, who writes beautiful poetry. But when we look at what Kalidasa writes about, he always writes about mythical subjects. It's true, he writes very beautifully, but it's always something mythical, something distant, something out there, not about how we live life every day, not about what we do every day, not about how a village works, what happens in a village, who does which kind of work. None of this is in Kalidasa or the great Sanskrit poets. Their vision is otherworldly. It can be very grand, but it doesn't include everyday reality too very much. When we get to Tamil and we look at the great works of Sangam literature, the Yettu Tohai and the other works, what we find is we find authors who are writing about life as they lived it every day. And what I want to do today is simply, but it's much more than that. The Sangam poets, I think, in some ways, the Tolkapiam and the Tamil grammarians have done an injustice to Sangam literature and to the great poets that it had, because they tend to see things in terms of categories and in terms of how the poem's supposed to work, what conventions it's supposed to have, and things like that. I like to look at these poems from a very different perspective, from a human perspective. And from this perspective, when we look at the poems, we find that they're about human suffering, human experience, things that happen every day, and also about human psychology. And that's where I'm going to transition over to the Ahananur to try to show you what I think goes on in two very great poems. And in my opinion, these are among the greatest poems you'll find anywhere from the Ahananur. Now, as you know, Ahananur contains love poems. These are conventional poems in one way. They have certain speakers. They have they happen in certain circumstances. There's Mudal, there's Karupurul, there's Uripurul, and all of these things are conventional. But the poems themselves are not simply poems that use convention. They may use convention, but the best of the poems go way beyond convention. So let me read one poem for you from Agananuru and see if we can get, hopefully I have it here. Yep, here's the other one. Yeah, there it is. See if we can talk about what goes on in this poem.
ஒரு இது அனுப்பியிருந்தேன்.
Huh?
ராஜுகாட்டு பேசுறது
உனக்கு அனுப்புறேன்.
Yeah. So this
I
poem.
mean,
Take it
I'm
that.
gonna. Yeah, I just muted Mr. George. Yeah, you can go ahead. Are you trying to share something, Mr. George?
Yeah, let me see if I can share it. I don't know whether, let me see, share. Where is share? All right, let me see.
Earlier we were able to see that. So, yeah,
How
you
about
start
that?
sharing.
Yes,
Perfect.
we,
Yeah,
we can see you.
we can see that. Yeah, perfect.
Good. Okay. So let's look at a poem, Mulle, poem 24. And I have the Tamil version here also. The Tamil is right here. But let's look at this one. Let's look at it in English. This is an amazing poem. I just can't imagine how this poet managed to put this together. The poem is the words of the Taliban. And the Taliban is in a war camp. The Taliban would often leave, as you know, most of you probably know this, would leave his wife, the Talibi, and he would go off to try to make money by fighting for the king. And he'd come back with money, and then they could live on what he had made. But at this poem, he is in the camp of the king who is waging war on another king. And he's thinking about the Talebi, the woman that he left behind. And it starts off, and he imagines what it must be like for her. And it starts off with an image which is really quite unforgettable. Let me read the poem slowly. Looking like the ends of conches left over by a Brahmin who has given up his sacrifices and makes bangles instead, the buds of Bahandre close tight with curling tips, suddenly open and bloom in the beautiful drops scattering in the wind. Now, one of the things, obviously, that helps to know is that it's the rainy season. And in the rainy season, it's especially hard for people who love each other to be apart. This, of course, comes into Sanskrit in the Meghaduta of Kalidasa, Kashchit Kanta, Virha Guruna, Swadikarat Pramattaha, and so forth. Beautiful poem. And I've argued that this is borrowed from this Southern tradition from which Sangam literature also comes. But imagine this is a very soulful description of this Bahandre opening. It's like the ends of the conches are useless. And the buds of the Pahandre, which are so beautiful now, are also useless because he's not with his beloved. So he goes on and he describes what it's like. In these last days of Tai, when the cool rains come to an end and the north wind hides the light of the rising sun, a huge black cloud seems to have stripped the skin from the sky as it moves along the emptiness and goes to the south. Now, this is an image that you can never, ever forget. The black sun has stripped the skin from the sky. And how does that go in Tamil? Wait, I got it here somewhere. Oh, it's here. Yeah, just a minute. Visumbu urivadu pol. Here, I'll put it here and point to it. Visumbu urivadu pol. What an amazing image. You can go through every Sanskrit work ever written and you'll never find an image like that, ever. At least I don't think. I've never seen anything like that. Seems to have stripped the skin from the sky as it moves along the emptiness and goes to the south. There, in her town, my woman with a bright forehead, somehow alone, is crossing through the black, cold night. So that's the first part. He imagines the woman he's left behind. And then it shifts over. It's kind of annoying. Yeah, I can move it, thank heavens. Then it shifts over. But I must be here in this night, where the bright bells ring with their long tongues on the small-eyed elephants with white blunted tusks, whose ornamental rings are broken from hitting the gates in guarded walls, and armies and arrows thump as they rain down, striking spotted leather shields bound with twine, and the royal drum roars out with a resounding sound. Here in this war camp of a king whose strong arm holds a sword that once drawn never returns to its scabbard while his army sleeps in the dark. And there we have the contrast between the the everyday the where the woman is in this very peaceful but sad peaceful environment right after the rain, and he who's instead of the rain he has the arrows coming down on the shields and so on. And if you read the Tamil, uh, the the alliteration is very, very striking. If you read Vela Parpan Valaram Tumita Valai Kalaindorinde Korundin Anna Talaipini Avra Surimuha Pahandre Sidaralam Tuvalai Tavalin Malarum தை நின்ற தன்பெயர் கடைநாள் வயங்கு கதிர் கரந்த வாடை வைகரை விசும்புரிவது போல வியலடத் தொழுகி மங்குல மாமுழை தென்புலம் படரும் பனியரும் கங்களும் தமிழர் நீந்தி தம் தம் ஊரோளே. She is in her city. A Nannudal, she who has a beautiful forehead. Yame, but we. Kadimadir, Kadavan, Paidalin, Todipilan, the Nudimuham, Marugia, Manne, Venkot, Sirukan, Yane, Neduna, Vonmani, Karipini, Karaito, Porikane, Udaipu, Tayangakural, Murasamod, Morangum, Yamat, how's it go? Kariture, Seria, Valude, Yerundo, Yerutor, Yeruvu, Tuil, Madinda, Tane, Uravusina Vendan, Pasare Yeme. We are in his camp. Pasare is the camp of the king. What is striking about this poem to me is the way in which the psychological feeling is brought out. This is a journey through the man's mind as he sits there. He thinks of his wife, then he thinks of all the things happening in this camp and how he has to stay there. Some of the poems, the psychological insights are really quite amazing. I don't want to, what time is it? I don't want to talk too long. So let's move on to another poem. This poem psychologically is very, very interesting. It's also one of the great poems from Sangam literature and from Indian literature. Uh, there's nothing at all like this in Sanskrit. Nothing ever is there. And frankly, I don't know of, I mean, maybe some other Indian language has something like this, but I don't know if it's there. Because when other Indian languages were written down and started their literature, they all they all imitated Sanskrit and they borrowed Sanskrit ideas. Tamil wasn't that way. It borrowed ideas from probably the folk literature of Tamil Nadu itself. So let's read this poem. This poem is, sorry, that's a mistake up there. This is spoken by the heroine, and she is apart from the Taliban, from the hero, and she's grown thin and pale and is sad, and the friend is trying to console her. And this is what the heroine says. You tell me, friend, that for a short while I should simply stop thinking and worrying about the man who left me to wither in pain like a field in drought. Incidentally, that's another image you'll never find in Sanskrit, that I'm withering like a field in drought. This is something which is written by people who are very close to the land. They're not city people. Performers live. But now it shifts around, and she starts talking about performers. And of course, this is 2,000 years ago. They didn't have Sun TV and they didn't have movies. Their entertainment was professional performers who'd go from one village to another and perform. And they would have music and they would do probably dramas and things like that. And so she starts thinking about performers. Performers live, eating their scant food as soon as others give it, saving nothing. They go in noisy wagons whose openings, covered by mats, look like the gaping mouths of crocodiles. Their lives are free of bother. They never have to say a village is their home. In the wasteland, they leave their troubles beneath the trees. Their clear, sweet-sounding Kane drums resound, and as they dance, they wear on their heads fetching garlands of dense clustered round yeruku flowers. On the lovely breasts of their women, garlands of bright avere flowers from the forest sway in the light of the roaring flames burning on their firewood. Their horns, large and small, sound like the trumpeting of an elephant and his slow-moving mate, as the murava drum sounds along with them, and the rhythm is beaten out like the croaking of frogs over the water when the clouds roar in the monsoon. With their many small instruments sounding in short bursts, they go to towns dancing and then move on quickly, tying their bags on their heads so they sway as they walk. When those performers with their large retinue leave a place, and when people of an old town see the empty performing field, they feel sad. That is how I feel in the evening. And so how could I forget the love my man showed, since it will not go away? Now, this poem touches on a universal human theme, which is the contrast between a state of being engaged and being alive and feeling like everything is wonderful, with the emptiness that comes when that whatever produced that state is not there. It's a very, it's a poem's hard to forget because it so accurately, in my opinion, uh, mirrors the way people feel and the way human psychology works. And you can imagine this is just what's going through her head. She stops and she thinks, well, when in a village, it's like, we used to go and we'd see these people and they was wonderful and they had a kind of freedom and we would kind of share in their vision of freedom, and then they would leave and everything would go back to the boring emptiness of what was there before in our lives. So it also talks about something else. It talks about freedom versus the kind of bonds that tie us down in everyday reality. And we always imagine being free of this. And in fact, we never quite are. But this poem has a lot to say. There's one thing in this poem which I never have quite figured out what it means, and the commentators aren't too helpful either. Maybe Dr. Prabhakaran can help. The last two lines, Kadalar Seda Kadal, Needindru Marattal Kudumo Matre. What exactly does Needindru mean there? That's my question. I translated, since it will not go away. It means literally without it being long, but that doesn't make much sense. So I don't know. Maybe that's what it means. So just to sum up, and I think I've talked long enough, these old poems are very special and they are very different from anything we see in other languages in India that I know of. Certainly, I know a fair amount about Sanskrit, and there's nothing in Sanskrit like these. These have a kind of richness of everyday experience, of psychological insight, and of a sense of how people live, which is not found in many other literatures. What was I going to say? Well, I think that's enough. If anybody has questions, we can talk about this a little more. But the one thing is that this is the formative literature of Tamil. You cannot have Tamil without Sangam literature. It doesn't exist. It may be a language, but it's not the same Tamil language that we know and we all appreciate. Sangam literature is the beginning of the Tamil language, and in some ways, it's the high point of the language in terms of literature. It's an extraordinary treasury that has been given to us by the people of 2,000 years ago. I know what I wanted to say. One final thought. When I translated these poems, they are so realistic that it took me years to do it, that I often felt as if I was living in Tamil Nadu of 2,000 years ago. My regular environment would disappear and I would be living in a village doing whatever the people in the poem were doing. They're so that's to that extent they are so engrossing, and they enter into your awareness so much. So that's all. That's basically what I wanted to say. And thank you all. Vanakkam, Nandri.
Thank you, Dr. George Hart. I have a question for you. What book would you recommend for those who are interested in Ahananuru in Tamil?
Well, the problem with Ananura is it's not exactly easy.
Yeah.
It's tough going. Uh, I think the best thing to do is you get you get a you haven't done Ananura, so I can't recommend your book on it. Uh, but there are many, then they're available online, many commentaries. And basically, the best way to get involved with Agananuru or any of these poems is to get a book which has a commentary where it gives the modern Tamil for each line. And then as you go through, what you can do is you can understand what it means. And then after you've done that, and maybe you have to go through it 2 or 3 times, you can start reading it over in Tamil, and the whole thing will make sense. So that's what I would suggest people do. And it's not hard to do either. It's not something which is, which you feel is difficult. All you have to do is go through and see what each line means and understand. And then as you do it, you will gradually get a feel for all of the forms and how they go together and what they mean. And the whole thing will become alive for you. That's what I would suggest. I don't know that you can just sit down and read a book about the Ahananura. You have to sit down and read the Ahananura itself. But it's a very rich book. It's amazing. If you read it, it's very enjoyable. And you can't do too much of it at once. Just read one poem every couple days.
The problem is most of the words are not in use, so you need to have a book that gives the meaning of the difficult words and explains what it is.
Yeah, actually, it's sort of interesting. You do have to do that because, but they are like, look at most of these words people know. I'm just looking at a line. Uh, let's see. Here we have Maramudal, the trunk of a tree or something.
Yeah.
And so forth. They're not that hard, they're not that different. But you just need a commentary to understand them. Actually, it's ironic, but I was going to say a Malayali can probably understand them just as well as a Tamil if they took the trouble to do it. But Malayalis don't realize that our language comes from Old Tamil just as much as modern Tamil comes from Old Tamil. But that's a whole different thing. But yeah, I think you need to find a good commentary and simple commentary. I mean, Puliur, what's his name? Puliur Kesigan.
Pure KCM, yeah.
Yeah, his commentaries tend to be quite simple, and for the most part, they're accurate. I mean, Tamil scholars may have issues with them, but just for the ordinary reader, they're fine. Of course, Tamil scholars all have issues with each other's commentaries anyway, so.
Um, so Thanks, Mr. George Hart. Aya, Prabhakaran Aya, can I just go ahead with our thanking note, and we can
Yes,
continue with your question session,
yes,
question
go
and answer
ahead.
session?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure, thank you. Um, yeah, good evening, everyone. And on behalf of Washington Tamil Sangam, I'm delighted to express our heartfelt gratitude for today's enlightening session in our Sanga Ilakkiya சொற்பொழிவுகள், Sangam Literature Lecture Series. So we extend our sincere thanks to Professor George L. Hart, former Professor of Tamil and Chair of Tamil Studies, University of California, Berkeley, USA, for delivering a deeply insightful and beautifully articulated lecture on Agananuru, an introduction. Professor Hart illuminated the emotional depth, inner poetic layers, cultural landscapes, and the intimate expressions found in Agananuru, especially the way he actually started with comparing with the Sanskrit, and that actually gives us a better light of how we wanted to compare our Sangam literature with that of the Sanskrit to have a better understanding of our literature. So we also extend our heartfelt thanks to our Washington Tamil Sangam President, Mr. Sendil Kumar, who continues to lead this lecture series with excellence, and to our former President, Dr. R. Prabhakaran, who has consistently provided guidance, direction, and scholarly support to strengthen this initiative. And special thanks to all of Tamil enthusiasts and participants who joined us today and enriched this event with their presence. Your participation and encouragement are the true strength of this lecture series. We warmly invite you to join us again for our next session as we continue to celebrate the richness and excellence of our ancient Tamil literature, literary heritage. Thank you, Nandri, Vanakkam. Yeah, now I think we can start with any questions. Prabhakaran, you wanted to add something before we hand it over to the people who already raised their hands?
No, you can go ahead with the questions. People have questions, I think.
All right, please. And I see Samrita, you had a question, and followed by Saro Ilangovan, and then Professor Mehla Ramamurthy. Thank you.
Good evening, Professor George Hart. I absolutely loved your presentation. It was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for this amazing presentation. My name is Samrada Guhan, and I'm a ninth grader, and I'm really interested in my mother tongue, Tamil. So I was wondering if there are any current Tamil research programs going on that you know of that I could help and join.
Oh my. Uh, well, let me see. Well, the thing is, if you're in this country, that there are some, there are now actually more than several universities where they teach Tamil, but I don't know of any research programs that are going on, which is it would be nice if there were, but you could start one.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I mean, why not? You're young and enthusiastic, and but you would, I think the one thing you want to do is yeah, if have you worked through the Tirukural? Have you can understand Tirukural?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I have an amazing teacher who can teach me the entire thing, and I've also done research on it at school as well.
Okay, so that's good. That means you have some sense of what Old Tamil is like. Then maybe you could, you could, well, what can I say? You need to read some books about Old Tamil, about Sangam literature, especially how it works, what are the various conventions, and that will give you an idea of what's there. And you can also read some of the translations. We have a translation of Purananuru, which is, I don't know if it's available. And then there's one of the problems is that many of the translations are, the English isn't as good as one might want. because the people, but yeah, well, I think you should follow up by trying to learn about some of the Sangam classics other than just Tirukural. Tirukural is a great start, but there's so much more there to learn about.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Can I say?
My sister has a
Wait,
question.
let
Oh,
them do
yes.
it. Yeah.
Sorry. Is there anything you'd like to say?
Well, you can, they want someone else to talk, so we shouldn't probably.
Yes. My sister has a question.
Yeah, did someone else have a question?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. George Hart. Like, I think Samrita's sister has another question. Could you please ask it, Samrita, ask her to?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, my question was how did you how did you get the interest to research about Tamil?
Stop video.
How what? How did I?
Samrita,
How
can
did-
you rephrase it? I mean, I think maybe it's hard for us to understand, but yeah,
Oh,
thank you so much for asking that question.
I'm sorry,
How
what
did
was it? Yeah.
How did you get the interest to research in Tamil?
Well, I got interested in Sanskrit and I learned a lot of Sanskrit. And then I wanted to learn another classical Indian language, so I started getting interested in Tamil. I guess it's that simple.
Oh, thank you.
thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you so
same
much
to you.
for your question, Samrita. And yeah, we are so happy that as a ninth grader and as your younger sister also are very much interested in Tamil, and that's exactly what we are so anxious about, like how we are going to continue our Tamil legacy after coming to US. And you both are the answers for our anticipation. But thank you so much for your question, and thank you so much, Mr. George Hart, like for explaining that so nicely. And
Thank you, sir.
yeah, and
Did
next I
you
have
want to say something?
Yeah, just may I
Can my wife say something? She wants to answer that.
speak in English?
sure.
All I want to know is that how old was the person who's asking about research?
Hi, ma'am. I'm in 9th grade. My name is Samrita.
Mm-hmm. And my name is Krishita, and I'm in 4th grade.
Wow.
So what is the question that you could create in just the 4th grade? How did he get the interest to research in Tamil? Research is a big task, right? You just start with first to read something and understand something and write something and create some. I translate, okay? So that's very hard because, I am a Tamilian, but of course, I live in this country long so that I can be able to do also in English.
Joy.
Hello?
Joy.
Yeah.
Joy.
Anyway, that's
Okay.
somebody else has a question.
Okay,
so-
go ahead.
You
Yeah.
can see
Thank
George
you.
Hart in the video here.
Yeah,
George
can you
Hart
see
and
me?
Kaushalya.
Yeah. There she is. Here.
Do you want me to talk or I can?
Well, I think
Yes,
they have
ma'am.
other questions. Let's see. Yeah, you go ahead otherwise.
No, I don't know which one now.
I think
Yes.
other people may have questions. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am. Thanks for your input. And I think next I have Mrs. Saro Ilangovan.
Hello, George. Good evening.
Oh, is this Saras?
Yeah, Saro, I don't know whether you are able to see me.
Let me see.
My video is on.
Oh, there. Yeah, I see you. I see
Okay.
you.
Thank you, George. Thank you very much. Nice to see you. I was wondering, these ancient, our Tamil poets, they have such a tender heart to tell the feelings of a young woman that I cannot understand. Those days they were talking about more bravery and fights and Maravargal and all that. And I'm surprised to see here a man is talking about a woman's heart. The other one, the previous one you said about the man, that I can understand. But the woman's heart, how did they know they have such delicate feelings and he can put it into poetry? That's, yeah, you have any idea, what is their psychology at those days?
Well, these people were poets, so they were attuned to people's feelings, I suppose. But yeah, and in fact, there are some very interesting. That one of the tines is uh, wait a minute, what is it called? The one about the courtesan. What's the tine about the courtesan?
No, Marudama.
Marudam. Yeah, one of them, Marudam, is about the man who unfortunately would get tired of his wife and he'd go spend his time with courtesans who were, and the poem, and some of the poems are about that, and they're very interesting in the psychological interplay of the women's feelings. Some of those poems are very, very insightful. And there's one which you cannot forget, in which the woman complains bitterly about how she has to deal with this man who's not being faithful to her, and she's very upset about it. So yes, people were very aware of women's feelings as well as men's feelings. And when we come to Tirukkural, as you probably know, the one of the things that Tiruvalluvar talks against is the whole notion of courtesans and that kind of behavior. He didn't like it, and he says you shouldn't do it. But this was unfortunately a part of Tamil culture then, and the poems are about them, and it bring out the feeling of women very, very accurately, amazingly, actually.
Thank you, George. One more thing, these women poets, they have sung some songs, Sahananuru, right?
Yeah, there are a few women poets, right?
Yeah, when you're a future lecture, I would like you to include one of those poems. I would like to hear their side.
Oh, well, we could do that. What's the one? Yeah, there's a couple women poets there, and of course the most famous is Alvayar especially in Purananur. Alvayar has amazing poems.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Mrs. Saravalinguvan. And I have Mrs. Professor Mrs. Meghla Ramamurthy. You wanted to continue?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your insightful talk on Agananuru, sir. My question is, the compilation of Agananuru is different from other anthologies, right? It's been divided into 3 parts. The first one is known as Kalitriyanai Nirai, that has 120 poems. The second one has 180 poems with the name Manimidai Pavalam, and the third one has 100 poems with the name Nitila Kovai. We can't see these kind of classifications in other anthologies. And another important thing I wanted to know is, here if you see, half of the poems are Balai Tinai poems in Agananuru. If you see, Kurinji has 80 poems, Mullai, Marudam, and Neidal, they have totally 400 poems respectively. What explains the disproportionate emphasis on Palai in your perspective, sir?
Well, that's something I've always thought about and wondered. I suspect, I don't know that we can answer that question, except that perhaps perhaps people were writing more Pali poems than the other kind. I don't know what, what would explain it. Or it's also possible whoever anthologized them, and they were probably anthologized, 900 AD, something like that. Whoever put them together, maybe he liked the Pali poems. Or maybe there were just more of them available. We just don't know the reason, at least not that I've ever heard.
Hmm.
But it would be interesting to know why.
Probably our Tamil men were moving a lot. They will be traveling a lot because of the lifestyle. They have concentrated on those poems.
It's possible. It might be a little easier to write a Pali poem. They're a little more conventional than writing a poem about Marutham or something like that. I don't know. It's well, one of the things that we can consider is that these poems were probably sung or recited, they were probably sung in the courts of kings. And many of them describe the battle of, specific battles between kings. And one suspects sometimes that the poet was singing this song in order to get the favor of the king so that the king would give him something in return. And it may be that something one could take a look at would be whether there are more poems like that where it talks about a certain battle and a certain king in Pali than in some of the other. But I don't think that's so, but it might be. Would be something interesting to look at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another thing is in Agananuru only we could see two poems related to Tamil marriage, right? The poems.
Yes, those two poems are very interesting, right?
Yes, poems 86 and 136.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, they are talking about Tamil marriages. So what's
That's
your
right.
opinion about, what's your opinion about them? Because it
Well,
talks
of course, there's no fire, there's no seven steps,
yes.
there's none of the
Mm-hmm.
standard things.
Mm-hmm.
There are no Brahmins there.
Yeah.
They're very interesting to
Very
see all of these conventions. I remember we have a Nayar friend, and he told me that in Nayar marriages, they don't have any of those things either. So it could be that maybe the Nayars have a very old
tradition.
marriage
Yeah.
tradition that goes way back. But of course, by the time we get to the bhakti poems, then we have the sort of standard marriage, and so but what can we say? Obviously, marriage was a very important thing in those days as it is now. And maybe one of the more striking things is that it isn't really all that different, even though you don't have the Brahminical things, but you still have the notions of everything having to be auspicious in all these different ways and all those things going on. So those are very interesting poems.
Yes, thank you, sir. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Mingla Ramamurthy. And now next we have Kamala Kannan who raised his hand. Do you want to go ahead?
Hello, sir. Hello, sir. This is Kamala Kannan from India. Good morning, sir. This is early morning in
good
India.
morning or good evening,
Good morning,
whatever.
Good evening, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So you have mentioned, I have a question for you. So you have mentioned there are no parallels in Sanskrit for Sangam literature. If Tamil, according to your view, at least it begins in 2nd BC. So how much time it would have taken to form its refined states, sir, according to your view? How much time it would have taken to Sangam literature to reach its refined state, sir? Or do you believe the Sangam literature wherein it's still in its folk form?
Yeah, okay. Here's what I think. I think that if we look at other literatures when they first started, for example, Greek, most literatures either imitate other literatures that went before, just as Latin imitated Greek, or they take their content and their ideas from oral folk traditions. And when we look at Purananuru, it's quite clear that a lot of the material is taken from folk traditions. You know, the poets themselves pretend to be Panans and the like. So the Tamil literature, like Greek literature, seems to have taken folk traditions and then turned them into something that they wrote down. And as they did that, the material became more complex and probably more sophisticated. But at the same time, I think we have to be careful when we talk about folk literature. I have tapes of a lot of Tamil folk songs, which are quite long, and the singers are really extremely sophisticated. They can speak Telugu, they can speak village Tamil, they can speak excellent written Tamil, and everything in between. And their sense of emotional involvement and things like that is really quite striking. So folk literature can be pretty sophisticated. It doesn't have to be written down. At the same time, I think that the Sangam literature was written by literate people who were, to an extent, imitating folk literature. Now, when we come to something like Tirukkural, yeah, they were probably, Tiruvalluvar was using proverbs as some of his material. But Tirukkural is also something which seems very much the product of one man's creativity also. So, it's all mixed. But I think that ultimately this literature grows out of folk literature. And that's one reason why it's not like anything in Sanskrit, because Sanskrit grew from a different tradition. Actually, from the Vedas and then on, and then the epics, which really look back to the Vedas in many ways.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kamal Kannan. And now we have Malar Chelvan. Do you want to go ahead with your question?
Yeah. Good evening, Dr. Hart. So it was
Good
a
evening.
very, very interesting presentation as well as very inspiring lecture. So I have two questions. The first question is, I know you compared, the Tamil in the Sangam literature with the Sanskrit tradition, and you just in the last question, you touched on the Greek tradition as well as just briefly. But can you provide some insightful or insights into the world literature versus world literature other than Sanskrit and Tamil classical tradition?
I'm sorry, the oral literature and Tamil and Sanskrit?
No, the world, the Greek and whatever the Greek or Latin or any other tradition or even Chinese. I mean,
you mean how they developed?
Yeah, how they develop it, basically comparing the traditions, right? That's what I wanted to understand. If there is a comparable thing.
Well, when we talk about the West and the beginning of literature, the really important work was done by two people, Lord and Perry. And it's a very interesting story. Perry went to Yugoslavia and he would go to various places, mainly bars and things like that, where people would hang out. And there would be a guy who would come and he would tell stories. And as he told stories, he had an instrument he would play, and he would tell the stories in a meter, just like the Tamil, old Tamil's in meter or Sanskrit's in meter. And what Perry thought is, my God, this sounds like what Homer must have done. And so they did a lot of work trying to analyze how these folk singers would put their works together. And they found that they used two basic things to make it work. One was formulae, in which case you use certain combination of words that fits the meter again and again, so that when you tell the story without having any text, you're just making it up, you can fit it into meter. If you read the Iliad, you'll see all over the place, it's always swift-footed Achilles, which is podas orcos Achilles. And somehow that fits exactly into the meter. And so the singer uses it again and again. And then he found that, for example, in other cultures also, the same thing happens. And he thought that the same thing was true in Greek. And what he came up with, or what they came up with, was that the folk singers would go around and they would recite these things. And when people learned to read and write, someone would come along and they'd say, "Oh, this fellow is very well known. He's a great artist in telling the story, so I'm going to write it down." And so he went and he wrote it down, but they had to slow down. And as they slowed down, the singer then would use it to make each line a little more perfect, a little better. And probably that's where the Iliad came from. It's also very likely where the Mahabharata, at least the older parts of it, came from. And if we go to Tamil Nadu, I don't know if these people are still there, but they were there 30, 40 years ago. They're people who go around to villages and they will sing songs, and they're quite good at it. And if you listen to them, we have tapes of them, they're very interesting the way, it really pulls you in, the story does. So then what happens is somebody writes it down, and then this serves as a sort of a basic model for literature. And then people begin to write things in that form with that meter in different ways and so on. And probably that is the source of the Tamil meters that we have, the main meter in the main Tamil text. It probably goes back to these folk songs. And if you look at, but one thing interesting about the Tamil works we have, like Ahananuru, Purananuru, is we don't see too many of these formulae. There are some, but not too many, because this was not oral literature. I don't think this was probably written down. I don't think it would be easy to do something like the song we just did, the Hanan Order 301, in an oral way. I don't think people could do that. Oral literature tends to be, 2-3 lines, and then it doesn't go on like this.
Thank you.
But yeah, but anyway, that's some evidence of how oral literature is used by literate people to create new literature.
Yeah. I have a follow-up question on that. So we all know that this is an anthology, right? I mean, the Hananuru or any of the, the Purananuru, any of these things are anthologies, which was documented later. But what is your insight? What is your opinion on the either it's oral tradition or what is the real period of this individual songs? For example, this 301 might be written in a different time than 41, the song 41, right? So these are all, it's a very high possibility these poems were written in different times before the anthology was kind of organized later. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think this is something you can actually do. You can look at the poets and the information we have about the poets, and you can trace generations. I think there's about, what is it, 3 generations of poets we can identify. So, but some people say, but that's only a start. It may well be that some of the poems are quite a bit earlier, and they don't, not too many. If we look at Agananura, Purananura, I don't think we see many that look like they're much later. I mean, later we get Silappadiharam, which incidentally is also based clearly on an oral source. But the language of Silappadiharam seems quite different to me than that of these anthologies. It may be Kalitoe, they say, was later. I don't know. It's, there's all sorts of speculation about which poets lived when, even about how accurate the attribution to poets is. There's one thing, incidentally, which to me is very revealing. There are hundreds of poets represented in Sangam literature. But 2 of the famous poets are Paranar and Kabilar, yes. And if you look at the poems of those 2 people, they're very different. And therefore, that makes me think that these were not all written by the same person, that they really were written by totally different people, and that very likely the tradition of who wrote them is correct. Why shouldn't it be? So I think, but as far as if we look at the Tamil in these poems, we don't really see the kind of changes in language that we see 400 or 500 years later. So I think most of them are actually quite definitely from this period, first 2 centuries AD, maybe a little later, maybe some a little earlier, but mostly in that period.
Thanks for your question, Chelvan. And now we have Mr. Soma Ilangovan.
வணக்கம் பேராசிரியர் அவர்களே, வணக்கம்.
வணக்கம். Oh, this is Ilangovan. Vanakkam, Ilangovan.
Purananuru was supposed to talk about outside life and all that, and Agananuru was supposed to talk about the inside and all that stuff. How come instead of saying, darling, I'm in war, I miss you, I love you, he's saying 33 lines to express that? What is all this paraphernalia about?
What, you mean in longer poem?
Yeah.
Well, what I think is going on there is, is the poet is imagining what's going through her head. And, this is what the poets do.
How come this is more about outside life than in Purananuru itself?
What's outside here? This is all how she's seeing the world. It's all inside her head.
Yeah, it looks like we learn more about outside life in Agananuru than in Purananuru.
Actually, that may well be true. Certainly about village life, you learn a lot more.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you,
You
Judge.
learn a lot about how people lived in Agana. And okay, so look, there's actually a different answer to that. When Ramanujan translated poems from Kurundoe, he called it the interior landscape. And what ultimately, when we look at, this is what I wrote in my introduction to the book. When let's compare a Hindu temple, say a great South Indian temple, to one of the great religious things in Europe, one of the great cathedrals. The temple looks like it's growing out of the ground. It looks like it's organic. The great cathedral looks like it's put down and is something that is created by people and put down there. The temple looks like it just grew there. In these old poems, and this is true in much of Indian culture, if you, look at an Indian miniature, you don't just see the king, you don't just see a portrait of a king. You see the king, you see his wife. You don't turn that on. You see the king, you see his wife, you see all of his courtiers, you see the palace, you see the clouds above the palace, you see a whole world. And this, I think, is something that is part of the culture in South Asia, of which Tamil, of course, is part. So that when the poet writes, he doesn't just write about, unless it's a very short poem, here's the woman and here's the man and she's upset and blah, blah, blah. He writes about the entire world around them because for him or her, for the poet or poetess, the whole world is part of the poem. And whatever the palm tree growing there is just as much a part of the whole thing as the fact that they're meeting surreptitiously. I mean, everything goes together to make a part. And that you can see in this poem. That's why all of this stuff about these traveling dancers and entertainers really fits in the poem, because the relationship between these two people includes the entire world. Every poem in either Sanskrit or Tamil is supposed to start with the world. Ulayalam Unandodat Karyavan and so forth, or, in Sanskrit, it's also there. So, I think this is something which is a part of the Indian aesthetic. It's something which Sanskrit and Tamil actually share, perhaps, although they do much different things with it. And Sanskrit never does as much with it as Tamil does.
We love your insight, George. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Soma sir. So now I don't know whether
I have only
one more question. Or yeah, sure, go ahead.
One last thing. It's not a question. I'm just appreciating Dr. Hart's effort to express the difference between Sanskrit literature and Tamil literature. I am grateful to him because I always get confused, because I don't know Sanskrit what is in there. But he clearly tells us that it's about more of human emotions being written as poem, whereas in Sanskrit, more of mythological descriptions were written poetically. So I want to thank him for that, to make it clear for us. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, we don't want to go too far. I mean, something like Meghaduta is quite beautiful in how it expresses emotions, but it's the everyday things which are in Tamil which really set it apart. And also, I think the examination of emotions in these of psychological states in these Tamil poems is quite deep, whereas in Sanskrit it maybe isn't quite to that extent. One of the I was going to maybe I can do this at the end. You might enjoy it. In Tamil can you turn that light on so I can read this? Now, just hang on 1 second. This light. I was just thinking last night, when you start a poem in later in Tamil and in Sanskrit, you have something called in Tamil avayadakam, and the poet is supposed to say how poor he is and he's trying to do something impossible. And the Sanskrit, one of the greatest ones is the Sanskrit in the Raghuvamsha of Kalidasa, Kwa Surya Prabhavo Vamsha, Kwachalpa Vishayamati, Titirshur Dustaram Mohat, Udupenasmi Sagaram, which is where is the line of Raghu and where is my mind, which is so incompetent? I am someone who would try to cross the ocean in a small raft. And I was thinking, comparing that to what Kamban did with his Avayadakam and the very famous verse about the cat. Ose petroyat pat karalotrora puse mutravum nakubu pukena ase patri arayalotrain matrik kasil kotram kotratiraman kadayaro. Beautiful. But just think in your head, where is Kamban getting this idea from? What Kalidasa has, it's beautiful, but it's a very conventional kind of thing. Who in the world ever heard of comparing yourself to a cat that's trying to lick up an ocean of milk? This is very interesting. And what it is, I think, is that Kamban is also in the line of the Sangam poets. Of course, he's 1,000 years later, but if you read Kamba Ramayanam, it also has many, many of the same characteristics that I mentioned in Sangam literature. So Kamban really goes back to Sangam times. And in terms of creativity, in terms of bringing in imaginative things, he's also very much like the Sangam poets. And this is something which seems to be part of the Tamil tradition, just as a thought. But that was something I was thinking about.
Great. Great. Thanks, Mrs. Soma Yangovan. And now, Prabhakaran Ayya, do you have anything to?
Yeah, I don't have a question. I just want to thank Dr. Hart for his interesting and informative lecture and also taking time to answer the questions. I'm also happy to note that we have been able to raise some interesting questions and get his input. So thank you all.
I would like to second that. I think some of these the questions are actually very, very good questions, and very interesting ones. So thank you for all, being so interested and having so many very well taken questions about Tamil. Uh, and it shows you some of the research that needs to be done. We also need to also look at other South Indian languages, not just Tamil, and see where they came from, what kind of folk traditions they are anchoring themselves in, because that's also relevant to Tamil. So we need to. There's a lot that can be done by comparing Tamil with some of the other Dravidian and even non-Dravidian languages of South Asia.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Hart. And I really thank from the bottom of my heart on behalf of Washington Tamil Sangam. And I've actually listened to you or one of your old YouTube interview where actually you have insisted the same thing since you have already learned Sanskrit scholar. So you then started reading Tamil, and then you wanted to also read the other languages of India, especially South Indian languages, to compare. I could hear the same thing that you have insisted right now. And so that's really helpful for us to do a comparative study and try to see how rich is our Sangam literature. And like when it's comparative, it would give us like a more enhanced view, a different view, a different perspective also. That will be really helpful. And I'm also very much when Professor Megla talked about the Palai, why we are seeing more Palai related poems when compared to the other Thinais, but that also started making me think about the time frame, and then there is a need for particular thing in particular time frame, whereas war or the peaceful Tamil what to say um, um, Tamil people's lifestyle and all those things. And Kalidasa, as you have mentioned, he's in the 5th century or 6th century. So where his time frame is basically insisted on bringing in more related to a Bhakti movement, right? Maybe that during the Bhakti movement, again, there are a lot of Tamil poems that came that resonates Bhakti movement, and completely all the poems were written towards that towards the Bhakti thing. Right, so that clearly gives a different angle of thinking back, like how these things are formed chronologically, and different time frame. But thank you so much once again on behalf of Washington Tamil Sangam for giving this exceptional presentation on this Agananuru. Thanks for your time, Mr. Hart.
Yeah, it's interesting. Of course, the Bhakti is a whole completely different tradition, but one of the things that you can see in Bhakti is the king or the god being treated like a king, and the temple being like a god's palace. And it's quite, there's all sorts of, you can go on to a lot of things from there.
Okay.
Because Bhakti really comes out of the soil of South India, even though it pays allegiance to the Vedas and all those things, but in many ways it grows up just organically out of the South Indian culture, perhaps with so that's an interesting field too, but we don't have time to talk about that today.
Right. Yeah, and also we extend our thanks to your wife, Mrs. Kaushalya, and I believe like she's like Tamilian, and yeah, and thanks to her for pitching in for answering some of the questions. Yeah, that was really nice to see.
Yeah, I think she wanted to talk more, but I thought we couldn't really, people would have other questions. So
Sure. Yeah, thanks to
she
her too.
says I wouldn't allow her to talk. Why don't you come here and say a couple of words? Well, yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, let's see. Yeah, okay. Well, I think that went I hope everybody enjoyed it, and thank
Yes.
you for having me. I'm, I enjoyed it. So thank you all. And I'm also very pleased to see so many people so interested in Tamil. That's a nice thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Hart.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
thanks, Prabhakaran Ayya,
Thank
for
you.
organizing this. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. So there we are. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank
Good
you.
evening.